Hello, I'm Stella and welcome to my channel 30 Books, where I talk about Australian books to encourage people to run out, walk and borrow or buy an Australian book, and most definitely read an Australian book. Bit of a change of scenery this time around. I'm in the radio studio where I work. I work for a blindness organisation in Melbourne, and we have radio studios, and this afternoon I interviewed a writer for a particular radio program, and I'm also talking about her book today, and I thought, oh, while I'm here, why not do something for my channel, because it's been ages since I've actually talked about books on the channel. I have been reading, but not in comparison to some of you booktubers out there. So I grabbed a handful of books that I have been reading recently as I raced out the door this morning. Now, something I have been reading, which I really lost the knack of, because I do think there's a knack of reading particular genres. So it's a bit like when you go to the theatre. If you haven't been to the theatre for a long time, you really need to reacquaint yourself with theatre. So I have been reacquainting myself with poetry. I used to read a lot of poetry, but I haven't done it for a very long time, and kind of modern poetry. And 3 women poets I have been reading. I have been reading Maxine Beneba Clark's How Decent Folk Behave, Evelyn Araleuan's Drop Bear, and Jazz Money's How to Make a Basket. Now, I say I have been reading because I haven't read, because I am continuing to read. Now, Jazz Money and Evelyn Araleuan Clark are First Nations writers, so Aboriginal women, and Maxine Beneba Clark is an Australian writer of Afro-Caribbean descent. I absolutely adore How to Make a Basket. Loved it, and still continuing to love it. So How to Make a Basket, it's got so many themes of women, matriarchy. So making a basket in many Indigenous cultures, it's very important. It's an important thing that women do. It is kind of an art and a craft. So it's really about the components that are not so much how to make a woman, but what it takes to build that particular community. The book is written in sections: before, longing, away from here, and endings. It is a supremely beautiful book. The first poem in the book is Sweet Smoke, and it's really about mothers giving birth, but it's a birthing tree. And I have to say, while I'm talking, I feel very ill-equipped to talk about these books, and particularly Drop Bear by Evelyn Araleuan. This won the Stella Prize for 2022, which is a women's writing prize here in Australia. Absolutely well deserved, but I'm finding this book hard going. And I say that I am ill-equipped because, and I'll be honest, there's things in these books that I don't want to read about. I don't want to know about them, but I think they need to be said, and they not just need to be said, they need to be read and understood by the readers. Like, there is some of these poems are really fierce, about colonialism, white colonialism, feminism in particular, with Maxine Beneba Clark's white feminism. And I don't want to say it's anger, but, there's nothing wrong with being angry. And I'm a woman and I'm freaking angry as well, but a lot of passion. And, you kind of feel a bit ashamed when you read this, but I have to read these, and they're beautiful works. So with Drop Bear, what Evelyn Araleuan's doing, Drop Bear is a bit of a myth in Australia about, we think we're hilarious, and we're saying to visitors, I remember the first time I was told about the drop bears when I was a little kid. It was like a tiny little koala bear with really long claws and it was going to stick its back into you and you couldn't get rid of it. And I totally believed it. Totally and utterly believed it. And I was in WA and we don't even have koala bears in well, they're not bears. We don't even have koalas in WA. Now, the interesting thing, I heard an interview with Evelyn Araluen, and she was saying that it's not in any Indigenous culture. So this is a colonialist view of the terror that exists in the Australian bush, and that white Australians are always looking for ways to terrify themselves and to make the outback or the bush or the country really scary. So if you think about, movies like Mad Max, Wolf Creek, and, the book and the movie of Wake in Fright. So it's a commentary on that, but Drop Bear is absolutely from the colonialist gaze. There are some poems that I don't really understand. It deserves to be read. Like, you think about poetry, like you kind of whip through it, but I think it deserves to be read like any book. Like, you have to give yourself time. Maxine Beneba Clark's How Decent Folk Behave, my favourite. The local women's march is pink dressed, determined, alive. The cheering, chanting mass streams past the inner city Sydney sites. A bold sign, centre crowd, floating up high says, I'll see you all I'll see all you nice white ladies at the next Black Lives Matter march, right? My feminism is intersectional, or my feminism is a lie. 500,000 knitted pussycat hats walk angry calm on Washington. They chant, we're women united, will never be defeated. My feminism is the black sister, white cat, fierce as. My feminism remembers the brown children bought and sold. My feminism slips unseen through the bars and razor wire. Such a fantastic poem. So that's How Decent Folk Behave, Maxine Beneba Clark. Other books that I have been reading. Earlier on I said I was talking to a writer, and I just finished this on the weekend. It's Alison Reynolds' The Near Daphne Experience. It came out in about June and July of this year, 2022. She wrote it during COVID. Oh my God. During lockdown. So while I was struggling to get out of bed, people were writing novels. It's a really interesting book. It's a romp, but Daphne, you learn about Daphne, but it's all done through the eyes of other people. So it's set in 2001 with emails, and back in the day when we wrote letters to people. So Daphne is a psychiatrist. She works in a mental health institution, sort of a prison as well. She's a psychiatrist. You learn about Daphne through all these letters, and Daphne has started dating, and she puts an ad in the newspaper. So you hear from respondents, men responding to her, you hear from her best friend, you hear from her mother. There's a couple of men in there. I don't want to give away too much. If you are looking for something uplit, but it's still got a bit of bite in it, it's funny and it's original, that is The Near Daphne Experience by Alison. On a completely different note, I also recently spoke to Eliza Henry Jones about her fantastic book. Salt and Skin is another 30-year-old writer, and I think this is like her 7th book or something like that. Oh, couldn't you just weep? It's a really interesting book. This is set in the outer Scottish Islands, the Hebrides. So it's about a family. It's about a family who are grieving, a woman and her 2 teenage children, and they move to these outer islands for work. And it's about how they've taken their grief with them. And then something happens really early on. The Luda, the mother, is a photographer, and she takes a picture of something that is quite confronting and somewhat intrusive to highlight climate change. So And they're in the novel, there's ghosts, there's witches, well, not real witches, but you know, it's the history of the witch trials around these islands. There's a foundling child. There's a lot about myths and legends, Celtic myths and legends. Really good book, really quite gripping and very atmospheric. So that's Salt and Skin by Eliza Henry Jones. I'm ashamed to say that my top pick really is a non-Australian book, and it came out a few years ago, I think in 2017. It's Less by Andrew Sean Greer. It's just absolutely delightful, and I say I don't want to shout about this big book too much because it is kind of a quiet book. You know when you see a movie and you absolutely adore it and you tell all your friends to watch it, and then they watch it because they go in with an expectation. They go, well, I didn't see what the big deal is, but so it's kind of like this book. It's just lovely. And it's about Arthur Less, who's about to turn 50, and his ex-lover, ex-boyfriend, who's much younger than him, is about to get married. And Arthur is invited to the wedding, but just thinks, no, I can't go because that would be too humiliating. And I can't say I can't go because that would just look like I'm chucking it. So he decides he's going to say yes. He's a writer. He says yes to all these literary events and places that he's been invited to around the world. And Arthur Less is a mixture of innocence, stumblingness, cluelessness, but also quite sophisticated and self-aware, but also not aware. And beautiful book, beautiful. Oh, you know, there's not enough books that are love stories. Now, this is nothing against romance, but when we talk about love, we think of romance. But where are now the excellent particular type of books that are literature as such and are beautifully written, that are happy and poignant and moving? Where are they? We need more of them. And with that, that is your 30 books for this time round. Thanks for joining me here in the studio, and very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year if I don't talk to you before then. Here in Australia, in Melbourne, or it's supposed to be summer, but La Nina is here. Climate change. And I'll see you next time on 30 Books.